Hello, happy Monday, May the 4th.
May the 4th be with you if you're a Star Wars fan.
If you're not, still happy May the 4th.
Okay, now we're going to show you guys who we decided was Scientist of the Week this week. And another thing we wanted to mention is if you click the second link, click here to watch the Flamingo cheer. Okay, you had to click the video part, and it will take you to a YouTube video that we created with all the Fleming staff, all your teachers, and we all sang a song for you. So keep an eye out for me, Miss Kwan, and Miss Brown, okay? We did our best trying to sing.
It's a little cringy.
And Scientist of the Week this week, give me a drum roll, please. All right, it's Jocelyn and Matthias. So Jocelyn is Scientist of the Week because she's way long deserving of this award. Ever since the beginning of the school year, Jocelyn has always turned in her work on time. She's always been nice to her peers, and now through distance learning, she continues to exceed our expectations, and she's always in attendance of our optional Zoom meetings and participates, okay? So keep up that great work ethic, Jocelyn. It's going to take you to far places, okay? Thank you for representing the Period 5 family, and if you're in her Period 5 family, make sure you congratulate her. And Matthias is Scientist of the Week because he's been stepping up his game. Okay, Matthias nuanced me with his digital ABC pages. Okay, maybe he's more interested in technology and how he can make his ABC pages 10 out of 10. So if in the past, we've asked you to draw and color, but if you're the type of person that likes to be on the computer and you like to make things digital and use technology, then you can definitely make a digital ABC page like Matthias has, okay? And I'm very grateful that Matthias has been turning in all his assignments on time and improving his work ethic. Continue this new routine, Matthias. Is going to take you to far places, and we appreciate you for representing the Period 6 family. You rock. So if you're in his Period 6 family, make sure you congratulate Matthias. All right? Woo woo to both of these peeps.
Okay, so now we're going to get on with our lecture notes for today. So we're going to be talking about ecology again. I know we did this a long time ago in like the very beginning of the first semester before winter break and before we switched to health. And I know y'all have been waiting, you've been asking us, well, when we were in school, you're asking us, when are we going to talk about animals again, miss? Well, now we're going to talk about animals. So what is ecology? Ecology is the study of the interactions between living things and their environment. And don't worry about taking notes on this, I forgot to mention, because we already took these notes before in your notebook, so it should be there. So that's why the writing is in black, but there's going to be a tiny portion in the middle that's going to be on limiting factors and carrying capacity, which we didn't really go over. So that's going to be in blue, and you need to write this in your notebook. So moving on. An ecosystem is made up of organisms, so living things, and the place where they live. So if you look in this picture, it's an ecosystem of like a pond or something. And you can see there's things that live there like the deer, the plants, the turtles, and everything like that that's living here. An organism is any living thing. So it could be an animal, it could be a plant like we learned about in photosynthesis, it could be a fungus like mushrooms, or it can be a bacteria like E. coli, which always happens to get into Chipotle. And then an ecosystem contains living things that we know are biotic and non-living things which are abiotic. So if we look in this picture, some biotic things could be the cheetah, the termites, the hyena, zebras, the trees, as we know they're living things, and some abiotic non-living things could be the air, maybe the dirt, and stuff like that. And we're going to be going over some ecosystem examples. We already did this before in the past, but we're just going to refresh your memory. So remember, an ecosystem, organisms interacting with each other and the environment. So the first one we're going to talk about is the coral reef. So some abiotic components, remember those are the non-living things, are the sunlight that's getting into the water itself, rocks, and also anything in the water like oxygen, which help the fish to breathe. Some biotic things are the fish and the coral reef. The coral reef is actually a living thing, and it supports a lot of animals that live inside of the ocean. Moving on to our other example is the rainforest. Some abiotic components are sunlight, soil, air, and water. Some biotic components are leaves, trees, and vines. And if there happen to be animals in this picture, like frogs or like birds or something, those would also be biotic components. And then, of course, our famous rocky shore zones, or the intertidal ecosystem, which we spent a lot of time discussing in the beginning of the year. Remember, a long time ago, we learned all about sea stars, which are my favorite animals, and we also learned about the disease that's affecting them, like sea star wasting. And we also drew a very beautiful diagram of the intertidal ecosystem. So some abiotic components are the rock, water, oxygen, and sunlight, things we already discussed. And some biotic components, there's a lot in here. You could just choose anything. There's fish, there's limpets, there's anemones, there's a kelp forest, there's turf, there's hermit crabs, or anything else that you see are living organisms on this rock. And then all ecosystems are made of abiotic and biotic component. Biotic things are all living organisms, and abiotic could be water, rock, sunlight, minerals, which could be found inside of the soil, which help like trees and plants to grow. There's the air that we breathe that have different things in it, like oxygen, nitrogen, argon, everything like that. There's the temperature, which when we discussed this a while ago, we talked about the desert ecosystem and how it's hot there, and also in the rainforest, how it's humid and there's a lot of precipitation or rain, and that goes with weather too, and also the soil. So this is where you need to start writing in your notebook. So a limiting factor is environmental resources that limit the growth of a population of organisms. And an example is how much space is available. And you can see on this rock, there's a whole bunch of mussels and barnacles that are competing for space. They're literally growing on top of each other. And that is because if you remember, like some of the organisms, they need certain amount of sunlight or they need certain amount of water, and maybe where this is, maybe they need less water. That's why they're all crowding here. And then other limiting factors are space, amount of food, amount of water, shelter, predators, and prey. Here's an example of some hermit crabs. So you can see that their resources are limited and the organisms are actually competing and they're fighting for them. So they're competing for the shell because, as you know, hermit crabs, they grow and then they outgrow their shell, so they need to find a new home. And they need to do this because if they don't have a shell, then they could be eaten by their predators and make a very delicious snack. And then something we didn't really go over that we added is carrying capacity. This is the maximum amount of species that can be held in an environment given the amount of resources like food, space, and other things. So if we look at this diagram, it's showing the number of organisms of one species on this side, and then at the bottom time. So as you can see, there's a line, and then there's this dotted line that shows the carrying capacity. So at the beginning, there's the beginning growth, and this is the population increasing slowly because at the start, there's only a few members of the population. Then there's rapid growth because there are many organisms that are reproducing, resulting in a faster increase in the number of individuals. So the growth is exponential. You might have heard of exponential rate in your math class, and hello, it's here in science class now. And also leveling off. As the population grows, more organisms are using the existing resources, growth slows, and the graph begins to resemble an S shape. And then D, the carrying capacity. The environment can only support this many organisms. If the population size arises above the carrying capacity, more organisms die than are born. The population drops below the carrying capacity. And E is fluctuations. Sorry, I don't know why Siri's trying to and Siri, I don't need her right now. Okay, so E is fluctuations. The number of organisms tend to rise above and fall below the carrying capacity due to the limiting factors we discussed, like food, water, predators, prey, and shelter. And carrying capacity is, once again, is the maximum amount of species that can be held in any environment given the amount of food, habitat, and other things. And then right here you see an example with deers, and it's showing like what happens to the population and the carrying capacity after they suffer a habitat loss or habitat damage. And this is determined by limiting factors such as food, habitat, predators, and much more. So the black-footed ferret's limiting factors include the habitat loss, decrease in prairie dog population, human-introduced disease, indirect poisoning from prairie dog control measures, predators, and man-made traps. And then there's another example with the white-tailed deer population. So it's showing this from a time of from 1985 to 1995. And a question that I wanted to focus on is, when was there exponential growth in the deer population? And as we can see, where is the population increasing the most? And that would be between 1985 and 1990 right here. And why did the population decrease near 1990? So some reasons why it could decrease is limiting factors, like there could have been a disease that wiped out some of the deer, maybe the food resources, there wasn't enough food for all the deer to survive, or maybe hunting, maybe it was hunting season and people wanted to hunt for deer, because some people do that for an activity or sport. And then why did the population increase in 1992 past the carrying capacity? So maybe there's just more resources available that allowed these deers to go above this carrying capacity. But as you can see, it didn't last for a long time, and it fluctuated and went back down because it's really hard to exceed that carrying capacity. It's there for a reason. You know, you're limited by your limiting factors and stuff like food and stuff like that, and it can't really support anything above what it can. And then producers are organisms that use energy from the sun to make their own food, and they do photosynthesis, which we all should know this, especially the equation. We should be experts. And here's a little diagram to remind you of photosynthesis. You have the light energy and the CO2 and the water going in, and then you get the sugars, which are the energy for the plants or for us during cellular respiration to create our ATP. And you have O2 being produced that we use in cellular respiration. Here are some examples of producers. We have kelp that you might have seen if you went to the beach. Sometimes it washes up on shore. We have corn, that great stuff that you eat and the elotes man comes and you put like cheese and mayonnaise on, or maybe you put like hot Cheetos on it. It's really fire. And then phytoplankton, which are inside of the oceans. They also are producers. And then we have consumers. So consumers are, some animals are called consumers because they can't make their own food. They need to consume or eat plants or other animals to get energy. So there are three types of consumers. There are herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. In herbs, you think of like the spices or something that you put in your food and makes you think of like plants, right? And then carnivores like carne asada, people or animals that eat meat. And omnivore like is the ones that eat like both plants and like animals. Okay, herbivores are animals that eat mainly plants. They eat things like leaves, grass, flowers, seeds, roots, fruits, bark, pollen, and more. Some examples are cows, horses, rabbits, sheep, and grasshoppers. Also, elephants, because they eat grass, hummingbirds, they eat nectar, and manatees, they eat seagrass, which we did an article about, I think, when we were doing one of our matrix a long time ago. And then we have carnivores. These are animals that eat mainly meat. These include insects and all animals. Some carnivores are felines like lions, tigers, and all cats. Birds of prey like the eagles, hawks, and owls. Sharks, frogs, and spiders. Also wolves because they eat deer. And here's some other mammals.
All right, so some other mammals that you see here are like the polar bear, leopard seal, tiger lion, grizzly bear, timber wolf, river otter, and the wolverine. And that's because some of these animals, they might eat mice, they might eat sea lions like the polar bear, they might be eating birds, or what does a grizzly bear eat? Fish. Okay, so we got to get some of that meat in order to keep their energy levels. Okay. Some other carnivores I see ahead is that shark. The leopard seals, okay? You'd be surprised, their size is so big, their jaws can open up this wide, and they're actually able to eat penguins, mainly baby penguins that get lost, okay? And some other animals are the sharks. They eat fish, okay? Sharks don't care if zebra fish are poisonous. So they're gonna go ahead and eat that bad boy. Spiders eat insects. Sea anemones, you'd be surprised, sea anemones actually eat crabs, okay? They secrete this fluid like we have in our stomach, okay? This acid that can break through the crab's shell and eat the crab. Okay, Venus flytrap, we talked about this one when we were doing photosynthesis and how we were saying that they were, think about the word, when they were autotrophs, right? Okay, because they make their own food. However, the Venus flytrap needs to eat those extra flies and insects in order to get those nutrients that they're not able to get from the soil. Okay, they don't eat the insects to go because they don't get enough energy from photosynthesis. And then the omnivores. These are animals that are able to eat plants and animals like me, okay? I like to eat salads. And on my salad, I got a little bit of spinach, a little bit of lettuce, but I also like to add some chicken, okay? So that most of the omnivores are humans, bears, raccoons, primates, seagulls, and other birds, okay? Even though the bear can be scary, he likes to eat his berries. And other animals that are, oh yeah, I went over that one. Turtles eat seaweed and jellyfish. Okay, so sometimes we talk about turtles eating jellyfish, and you know that jellyfish are poisonous. Okay, they got stingrays, but the mouth of the turtle is so thick, their tongue is so thick that the stingrays from the stingers from the jellyfish don't harm the turtle. And we also have, oh, I already went through that one. Humans eating veggies and meat on like my salad or like my chicken fajitas. Okay, gorillas eat insects and fruit. And the crows also eat berries and insects. And I just want to add that crows are super smart, okay? There's a gif that I've seen of a crow. You know, we put food in a trap, and then the crow has like a few like instruments per se, and the crow is doing like trial and error with all these instruments trying to get that food out of the trap. So crows are really smart. And also raccoons, you know, sometimes you see raccoons in your dumpster and you're like, ew, that's gross. But if you think about it, we destroyed their habitat by urbanization, by building homes, you know, by deforestation. So the raccoons have to come to our trash cans to find a little bit of fish, a little bit of insects, and hopefully some leftover fruit. And then we have our scavengers and decomposers, okay? Think of the word decomposers, decomposition. What do you think that means? So if you're thinking decomposition, decomposition means breaking down. So something must be dying, and scavengers might be looking. Okay, so good. Scavengers are organisms that eat dead animals or waste from other organisms. So they don't get to eat first. They get to eat last. Okay, so remember in Lion King, the hyenas come out, and Scar's like their king or whatever, and Ed and all the other hyenas are excited that they're now part of the pride. Okay, and they start eating first. That never gets to happen. Okay, so lions eat first and hyenas come last. They get to eat whatever is left over. So they're here, right here, the hyenas eating the dead zebras and buffalo. And then the vultures, okay, vultures eat the dead, also the dead wild beasts. They're always looking out for what's left over. The crabs that eat dead fish and dead shrimp. You know, crabs, obviously, they really can't swim, so they gotta walk on the bottom ocean floor. And anything that dies up top is obviously gonna sink down, right? So the crabs get to eat that dead fish and dead shrimp. And then the dung beetle larvae. Okay, he eats animal poop. So right here, he's like using his two back feet to roll up this big ball of poop that he's gonna go and eat later on. Yummy. Okay, worms, they eat dead animals and plants. And termites, okay, they eat dead wood from trees, or sometimes when, you know, your house is getting a little old, and most of the houses in California are made out of wood. So when your wood starts to rot, or as in my case, there was a freaking tree out my window and it started to decay, and I started seeing these bugs, and I was like, oh no, termites, okay? They're not harmful, but they're just eating the dead wood, and it's part of nature, so don't get grossed out. Okay, decomposers help break down dead organisms, species, leaves, and other wastes made by animals. So if you say decomposers, you know, you might think that's a mushroom, that's gross, but think about it. He's actually helping you break down those dead organisms that might have died in your garden, okay? So don't get grossed out. Decomposers recycle nutrients from dead organisms and put them back into the soil. So we have to be really thankful for the decomposers, because when we were talking about compost, you know, these are the things that are helping us recycle those nutrients and put them back into the soil so we can have some rich soil so that we can, cover up our plants and they can take up all those nutrients again. And we can have some sweet tomatoes, any kind of fruit that we're growing in our gardens. So we got to be thankful for those decomposers. And also mushrooms. Okay, this is another type of decomposer. They help decompose dead plants, and mushrooms and all type of fungi. They're super insane, and they all look different. When I was in Costa Rica, I saw some crazy mushrooms, and my friend was super obsessed with them. She was taking pictures of many different kinds of mushrooms. Okay, another thing that helps decompose dead plants are the earthworms, and they have this super long esophagus tube that leads from their mouth all the way to their anus. Okay, so they don't really have a stomach. They basically decompose everything from their mouth and out the anus. And bacteria, okay, bacteria can almost decompose anything. They're ruthless. So for homework, if you can go back, okay, to the notes on limiting factors, we want you to do an ABC page for limiting factors. Okay, your picture needs to have color, at least 3 or more, and you need to have a 5-sentence summary. And some of that information might come from this YouTube video that I've hyperlinked on Quant Science. It's important for you to understand what a limiting factor is and how it can affect all these ecosystems. So think about how the producers might be affected if there's not enough water, and the domino effect that it's going to have on the ecosystem. Think about it. If there's not enough water, is there going to be the same amount of plants? And if there isn't the same amount of plants, how is that going to affect the deer if it's a forest, How is, what other example can I think about right now? How is the amount of sunlight, another limiting factor, going to affect the plants, okay, if they can photosynthesize or not? Or what about the space, like we were talking about with the barnacles and mussels? Okay, if there's not enough space, are they going to be able to reproduce? Is that going to affect on the predators that they have, or what's going to happen? So think about the entire domino effect of the limiting factors, okay? And next, just a little reminder to tune in on Wednesday at your Zoom time. On Wednesday for Zoom at your time, okay? We are going to be doing a practice on limiting factors because this is a big standard, and some people can get confused on the effects of a limiting factor and carrying capacity, because as biology gets harder, we're going to be seeing harder graphs. You're going to be seeing more factors that can be involved in an ecosystem rather than just one. Okay, so we're making it easy. We're starting off with how can one limiting factor impact this ecosystem, but it could be up to like 3 factors and more. So we got to take that into consideration. So please tune in at that time so we can help you with that. And that's it. So thank you for watching our YouTube video. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe down below.
Bell notifications.
Yeah.
And the special
give this video a thumbs up. I'm just kidding.
Just kidding. But yes, make sure to do your ABC page, L for limiting factors, and really tune into that Zoom. Encourage your peers to come to class when it is our time, because it's a tricky concept and you will need help, and that is going into the grade book. So see you all on Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.
And you will see Miss Kwan on Wednesday too. She just said hi.